Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Everything Co-op. This is a beautiful morning in Washington, D.C. And we have Mr. Ted Rao on with us this morning and Mr. John McNamara. Ted is he's a co-founder of Sociocracy for All. He founded this and he's the executive director. And John McNamara is with the Northwest Co-op Development Center. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Ted, what is sociocracy?
Yeah, sociocracy is what we would call a governance system. So it's a way to help groups make decisions. And it's typically in two parts. One is about how we decide who decides what, so that everything has a place where it can be decided and many people can be decision makers. And one is about how do we decide. And that is, in sociocracy, consent decision-making, so a way of making decisions together that really makes sure every voice matters in the decision-making process. So it's just a system for groups to figure out how they can make their decisions collectively.
So it's a system for making decisions collectively where everybody has a chance. So it's who makes the decision
and how do we decide.
How do they make the decisions?
Yes,
who and how.
Exactly.
Okay. Not when and where, but who and how. Okay. Who makes the decisions and how do they make decisions? Is there a need for such a thing? We've had governance systems.
Well, there is a need if you're not happy with how decisions are made right now out there in the world, and there's plenty of reason not to be happy with it. For example, majority vote is a decision-making method, right, that is used all over. And just how it plays out is that the 51% have a say about everything and the 49% are not going to be heard. So I guess I would see a huge need for new governance systems just to have more places where people can actually listen to each other and really also take in the minority voices. And also there's a big need, for example, in organizations that have very inclusive decision-making methods, like where everybody decides everything together. They often get worn down by those processes. They often struggle or just meetings taking very long and not having full clarity and very much frustration with informal kind of power hierarchies that develop in these kind of unstructured environments. So sociocracy is kind of something that sits in between. It's structured enough, and yet it is still inclusive. And that is a sweet spot that current systems typically don't have.
Structured enough, and everybody will have some structure, but it's not one where everybody has to agree.
Yes, so let's go in a little more deeply into that. So what we do is we take all the decisions that could possibly be made in an organization and kind of chunk it down into, package it into something that's more manageable. And we say, okay, let's say marketing. You guys, this group of 4 or 5 people is now going to look at marketing, and that's the key point. Those people will be the final decision makers on marketing. So they get to decide. It's not that they can be overruled by somebody like the executive director, for example. So that we take everything and chunk it and then have those groups take care of it. So in that way, everybody who is a member of a group that is making decisions has a say there. And then in addition, we have systems so that people can give input to those groups, so that, let's say, the marketing team, if they make a decision that is a pretty fundamental decision for the organization, they can ask everybody else in the organization for their input, so those 5 can really make a good decision that is very much informed. But that creates some clarity on who decides what. And again, I want to emphasize, because people miss that piece, the point that those groups will be the final decision makers on those topics. So we really hand over the power and distribute it completely and say, okay, you guys work on it, you also get to decide. So that's a fundamental piece of sociocracy, the distributed decision making.
Ted, I'm used to the hierarchy. So you have a head guy up at the top, and then you have, I don't know, a board of directors. If you're talking about you have a president, executive director, board of directors, different divisions, marketing, production, whatever. But the head guy has the final decision. And now you're saying, the head guy won't have the decision. The marketing group, if that's what this group decides, they'll have the decision on marketing stuff, and production will have the productions, and distribution on this, whatever the groups are, then they have that power to make decisions as it relates to that.
Yeah, pretty wild, huh? Yes, and the idea is really that we trust the people, right? That those who are the closest to the work actually know what should be happening. Because what we have in hierarchical situations out there, right? If you look at a company, the people on the ground know exactly what's working, what isn't working, but nobody really asks them. And sociocracy really flips that on its head and says, no, the people who are working on the ground, if we let them make the decisions, then it's probably going to be more related or like more relevant to what is actually needed and more realistic. Wow. The other piece is that it encourages more self-organization, right? If you think something needs to happen, form a team and go do it. And it's not going to be the situation that you have all these ideas that then get cut off by the people in power, right? So if there's energy around something and you get the mandate to take care of it, then you also do it, and nobody's going to shoot it down then.
So I want to get John in this conversation here, but I got a whole bunch of questions like how did it get started, how is it going, blah blah blah. But John, you're from the Northwest Co-op Development Center up in Seattle, in that area of the world, Northwest. Why are you interested in sociocracy?
I think sociocracy is sort of a native operating system for cooperatives. Cooperatives are based on one member, one vote. They're based on the concept, the values of self-responsibility and democracy and, equality and equity. And I think sociocracy is a system that actually has that built in. That, we often talk about one member, one vote, but I think sociocracy takes that one step further and says people should be involved in actually creating the proposal, not just voting on the proposal. And it creates a lot of buy-in. It creates a lot of strength in organizations because people are invested in decisions they help create, right? Instead of just voting on something. And so that buy-in really makes it strong and really makes it vital. And I think from the cooperative ethos, sociocracy is a perfect fit, really, in how organizations should run. And too often, cooperatives tend to model their competitors, which tend to be very hierarchical and majority rule, and that pulls them away from the cooperative model. I think we call it isomorphism in the management world, but it's sociocracy keeps those values alive and functioning in our co-ops.
So what you just mentioned was principle number 2, democratic member control, one member, one vote. But the first one, co-op principle, is voluntary and open. Membership is open to anybody and everybody. And then there's a member's economic participation in co-ops. They put some money in, and if there's a profit, get some money out. And then there's autonomy and independence. And you mentioned that a little bit too, that the co-op members have to have control. So they have to have control. One member, one vote. And you're saying now, though, they get to vote on things under co-ops, but with sociocracy, they get to create that thing which they get to vote on. Did I summarize that okay? Is that
Absolutely, and I would add education, information, and training too, because with sociocracy, even those workers in an organization that aren't actually members still participate, and so they learn about cooperative ethos, and that might lead them to choose to be joining the cooperative later on. But it will help them see the value and the cooperative difference as well.
So you just mentioned the 5th principle, which is the main reason I started liking co-ops: education, training, information, that everybody throughout the organization gets trained, and a part of that is that the co-op needs to train the community about co-ops and legislation about co-ops. So that's a big one for me. Okay, so sociocracy fit in here. I wonder if that's going to be the 8th or 9th principle. Okay. Create that which you are going to vote on. So, John, as you're developing co-ops, are you recommending that they would use this model for their governance?
I absolutely include that when I present on ways that they can make decisions, and I highly encourage sociocracy. Of course, it's up to them. I mean, we don't prescribe how people should run their organizations. We educate, we train, we give them the information, but it's, of course, it has to be something they choose to do that fits within their culture. And we talk a lot about how to create a cooperative culture, of course, and include that, but it's always up to them.
Okay. So what is your, and the last 10 that you've done, that you've told, how many have chosen sociocracy, or do you have any sense of how that works?
I would say when people hear about it and learn about it, they tend to gravitate towards it. They like it. It's always how much they adopt it. I think it's a very natural sort of feeling organization, but whether people go all in and do the prescribed model that Sociocracy for All teaches, or whether they take parts of it that really work for them, it varies. But I would say at least out of the last 4 or 5 co-ops, I would say 3 or 4 have taken some form of Sociocracy on.
3 or 4 out of 5, that's 60-80%. That's pretty big. Okay. By the way, I've done a little training in sociocracy, and I like what I've learned, and I want to do some more myself. So I really like it from a standpoint that everybody, and maybe Ted, you can explain this. If I were in a manufacturing concern, the people on the floor, the bottom of the group, the way that the hierarchy works, the people on the floor, and I used to be at a Ford manufacturing facility on the line. We never had any say of what happened. So how would those people have a voice?
Well, and if you think back to that experience, I'm sure there were a lot of people, a lot of things that you knew what could be improved, right? That goes back to what I said earlier. So, again, I'm going to use one term that we use in sociocracy that I find really useful just as a term. And I know there's kind of a little bit of jargon that comes with everything one learns new, and it's the term of a domain. And a domain is everything that you can decide, right? So the question is, what domain can be held by those people? And I'm sure there's a lot, but one would have to dig a little deeper of how it's structured and so on. But really, we're trying to create those areas and domains where those people have particularly much to say that really affect how they work.
Ted, we're going to get ready for our first break, and I really want to understand more about the domain and how you set this domains up throughout an organization of what an individual group can decide. So what we've heard so far is that from Ted, he is a co-founder of Sociocracy for All. And Ted, what is your webpage?
Sociocracyforall.org.
How do you spell sociocracy?
SOCIO, and then Chrissy like in democracy. So then it's sociocracyforall.org.
Sociocracyforall.org is a way that you can find out about the organization. And John has been talking about how to utilize this in developing co-ops. We'll be back to talk more about the domains in sociocracy. Please don't touch that dial.
Your news talk station.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and the program is Everything Co-op. And we have Mr. John McNamara and Mr. Ted Rao on the line with us today. We're talking about sociocracy and cooperatives. Before we took break, we were talking about domains. I had asked a question about people on the line in a factory. Normally in a hierarchy, they're at the bottom of the totem pole and they don't get heard. And you were mentioning that there are domains. How are domains created, or how does it all work?
So the easiest way to think about it is the following. If you think of how to start an organization, that's easier to think about it that way. So let's say you have a group of 6 people coming together, founding an organization. Then those 6 people would decide everything together in the beginning, right? Okay. Let's assume that they now say, okay, 3 of us should make the website, okay, for the organization. They would now form what we would call a sub-circle that makes the website and decides everything about the website, because we had said that if you pass on a domain and you pass on part of the task, you also pass on with that the final decision making to them. So now let's say there's something else that they do. They now form another subcircle, and again they pass on the domain for that subcircle, whatever it might be. And then, for example, website circle might pass on some of its subdomains to other groups, so that you have a fractal pattern of everybody passes on things to a more concrete group that really focuses on that area. So now if you look at, back to your question about the manufacturing company, or the co-op, then now we would have to look at, okay, what are the different pieces, right? You're kind of looking at it with that angle from there, and it really depends on what else there is. But ideally, they would have a say on how manufacturing goes.
Okay. So, John, you were talking about starting co-ops, and you said that out of perhaps the last 5, 3 or 4 of them used all of Sociocracy or parts of it. Okay. And what I heard Ted just say is when you're starting up a co-op, that's when those people that are starting it would make a lot of decisions about who will be in what domain. How has that been working for you?
I think it gives clarity to the organizations that some of the groups I've worked with, they start as more true collectives where everybody is involved in every decision, and that becomes difficult as they get bigger or more complex. And by being able to compartmentalize the work and have smaller groups, it allows them to be more efficient in their process and more engaged. And not everybody is always interested in every part of the business, right? There's areas that people gravitate towards. For myself, I always gravitated towards marketing, and so why does someone who really understands and enjoys marketing need to deal with maintenance? Right? What input are they going to have with that? If they don't like it and they don't really understand it, let them focus on areas that they do excel in. And I think that's what gives a lot of life to it.
And giving life to it is why 60 to 80% of them will gravitate towards Sociocracy.
I think so, yes. And people want to be heard. They want to have their voice. And we know this from long-term studies in the U.S., that workers value having agency in their work and having a voice in their work, and almost more than pay. It's a bigger consideration than pay and benefits, is being able to be treated as a full human in their workplace. And so I think Sociocracy is a model that actually helps elevate people's voice.
John, I have a hard time believing you that people want to hear their voice more so than money. Okay, you just said.
No, there's a study called What Workers Want by Joel Freeman and Robert McKenzie, I think, and I probably got his last name wrong, but where over 20 years they actually polled and surveyed workers, and that's what they found, is that workers really value agency as a human in their workplace.
I said that jokingly because Dame Pauline Green on this show said that co-ops help people come out of poverty with dignity, and my sense of that dignity is having voice.
Right.
Okay. Where you feel good about self, where you know who you are, and that your comments mean something. And when they are accepted and voted on, and then it makes a positive improvement to the whole group, then you have worth, you have value, which is more important, self-worth and financial wealth. After you've got enough to eat. Okay. Okay. Once you can feed yourself and have a safe space, then that worth is so extremely important. Yeah. Got it.
Can I add something to that? Sorry.
Please.
Can I add something? And that is that I just want to mention one, because I find it so I guess disheartening is that there's a lot of talk when it comes to voice about like, oh, we want, people want to feel heard. And I almost want to take like a red marker each time and cross that out. It's not about making people feel heard. It's about hearing people, right?
Okay.
And even better, giving them a say, like the actual say, right? Like let them decide. And that to me is that's the essence of sociocracy, really. Let them actually be the decision makers. That's the point.
So not a sense of feeling. Yeah, I come and feel John and feel John feels heard. Okay. No, it's not that. It is John is being heard. He can look at people as he's talking and see that they are hearing him. And then what the vote comes up or what happens, they know that their comments were heard. It's put into the policies or whatever, or the marketing strategy if John is in a marketing group. Okay. That causes one to have self-worth. And that to me, for my 75 years on this planet, is more important than money. And then I didn't need to study what workers want. I had come to believe that in my experiences, both when I am heard or not heard, and then people around me. So yeah, I totally, that's been my experience. So Ted, how can people learn about this sociocracy?
So what we do in Sociocracy for All, and that's what the name also says, is we want to give people access to this stuff because it's been around for decades now, actually, but not really picked up until, let's say, 10 years ago it really started, or maybe 8 years ago, that people really saw the value of it and a bigger number of people wanted to go for it. So what Sociocracy for All is doing is just giving access. And one thing I want to say, just like John and his work, for us, this is not a prescriptive thing. We're not walking around and saying everybody should do this, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of self-determination and self-governance, which is what I care about the most. What we want to do is give people options, because if you don't know about it, if you think hierarchy or deciding everything together is the only option or are the only options that you have, then you can't even tap into that. So we wanted to put it on the map as one of the things that you can do. The way out for some people who look at it. And so how one can learn about this is on our website, especially on the content page. So sociocracyforall.org/content. It has all the things spelled out, how to make decisions, how to have meetings, how to set up a structure, how to get started, all of that. And then some other processes that come along typically with Sociocracy. So that's one way. And of course, there's paid trainings and so on, all the deeper stuff, but the basics are all out there. We took care of that.
So go to sociocracyforall.org, go to the content page, and then get a lot out of that. Okay. John, I heard you guys are having a conference, though. Is that another way that people can come to get this?
Absolutely. Next Thursday, in fact, we will be having an online conference. It is an international conference. So I think on the website, sociocracyforall.org, you can search the events and find it to register. It's going to be really exciting. There will be a session called that's basically sort of a 101 session for people new to sociocracy and also for people new to co-ops. So to discuss how the two work together and also really align sociocracy with co-op values and principles. We have another of other sessions. I should mention that Sociocracy for All is an international organization, so we're really exciting. One of our workshops will be a co-housing community in Belfast, Ireland. We also are going to have a meetup group for a burgeoning co-op and sociocratic movement in Turkey. So the Turkish language will be spoken in that group. I'm not sure what our language options are for the entire conference, but there'll be a number of different sessions of learning about how sociocracy works within different cooperative movements. And I think it runs for 6 hours. And we use the universal time constant. I don't know exactly when that is. I know for my time it's 8 a.m. till about 2 p.m. So
I heard you say you go to Sociocracy for All, go to events, and I'm in the web page now. Sociocracy for All, books, resources, training, and events. Events and workshops. You know, we're going to have to come back. Sociocracy in Cooperatives Conference 2022 on June the 23rd from 11 a.m. to 1800, I guess that's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to take our second break, and then we're going to come back. And John and Ted, I really want to get into some of these workshops and a little bit more detail on what's going on in this conference. We'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial.
Your news talk station.
We're back, everybody. This is Vernon Oaks. The program is Everything Cooperative. This program, John and Ted, we've been on almost 9 years. October will be 9 years, and National Co-op Bank has been our sponsor throughout that 9 years. Cabot Creamery has come in this year, our creamery, to help us also. But NCB's mission is to support and be an advocate for America's cooperatives and their members, especially in low-income communities, by providing innovative financial and related services. So have either one of you gentlemen had the opportunity to work with NCB?
Not directly, but the co-op, my home co-op, Union Cab of Madison, was founded with a loan from NCB back in 1979. So we were one of the first loans that they issued. So
and what is that home co-op?
Union Cab of Madison in Madison, Wisconsin. So Union Cab is 40-plus year legacy of the NCB.
Fantastic.
So part of the reason I'm here, I guess, today is because NCB was around in 1979, and I was only 15.
They have been a great partner of the show because not only have they helped with money, but they've been here for the other things that we've been talking about: support, listening, hearing, giving advice. They've been a wonderful, wonderful partner. And Roberta McDonald was on the show from Cabot Creamery, and they are now pitching in to see how they can help us and how we can work together so we can support them and they support us. So I want to go back to the conference. John, you had mentioned one-on-one. Was that you that mentioned a segment of the conference where there's going to be some one-on training to find out what is sociocracy and what are co-ops?
It will be sort of a 101, a basic level introduction.
Oh, 101. Yeah,
okay. That'll be with Andy Grant and Mark Simmons from the UK. For people who are new to it or are interested and are co-op or sociocracy curious, want to learn more about it, that will be a great session for people to put their toes in the water and check it out.
So this is on the 23rd of this month, which is next Thursday.
Right.
And it starts at 11?
Well, let's see, what would it be? It would start at 10 a.m. Eastern and run until, I guess, 4 p.m. Eastern. Is that right? Or, yeah, I think that's correct.
What I just saw on the webpage was 11 a.m. Eastern and 6 p.m.
That's right. You're right.
The reason I want to get it straight is because I have my radio show from 10:30 to 11:30, so I missed that first half an hour, then I can hop on it after that. That's why I was trying to figure out when it is. And so folks from the UK are going to be doing this training. So because it's virtual, you can get people from all over and they don't have to travel.
Absolutely.
Which is neat.
And the organization itself is international. We have members and participants from all over the world, and even a whole network that is for Spanish speakers as well. That actually came out of the co-op circle. One of its founding members was part of our co-op world, and felt that there needed to be a Spanish language structure as well.
Yes, absolutely. So Sociocracy 101 and Co-op 101 with Andy Grant and Mark Simmons, 11 a.m. Okay. So what is Adventures in Sociocracy at Third Sector Accountancy? What is that?
Yeah, I think that is going to be talking about the startup process, but also how you manage growth, and especially when you have an idea in the co-op world and you have rapid growth. That's something that co-ops often have to deal with is how do you manage growth and maintain your cooperative identity and values. And they'll be talking about how Sociocracy engaged with that and allowed them to grow. And I should say that, the organization itself has done a lot of rapid growth over the last 5 years from our initial founding.
So you're talking about Sociocracy for All has grown.
For all, right. It started out as, I think, 2 or 3 circles and now has a huge network.
So what's a circle? Ted, you want to answer?
Yeah, a circle is, that's just the word we use for a team that has kind of that defined domain where we know exactly who it is and what they're doing. Yeah, and Sociocracy for All, we started with 2 people and then 3 circles and so on, and now it's, I think, 50-something circles. So that's quite a lot of people all doing their own thing.
Ted, I got to go back a little bit. You all started with 2 circles, and now you have, did you say 50 circles?
50-something, yeah. Well, we started with 2 people. It was me and my co-founder starting it and saying like, oh, let's do the Sociocracy for All thing. And
when did you start?
I should know this, shouldn't I? 2016, 2017, 2016 probably. And then what happened was that people were like, oh, this sounds great. Can we join? And we thought, join what? It's just us, And then we're like, okay, fine, we'll be a membership organization. And then people started joining. It was just so much growth, which, in Sociocracy is fairly easy to handle because you just pop out another subcircle and populate it. But yet it was a little disorienting at times just because growth is, right? When things just change. So that has been very much our own experience as well.
Yeah, because if you've got 50 circles, even if it's just 2 people per circle, that's 100 people. If you got 5 people per circle, that's 250 people.
Right, and there's overlap, of course, a little, right? That's the good thing, because that keeps the whole thing sane and everybody's better informed. And some of that is by design, so that's actually something that we deliberately put in place, that if we have a so to speak, as parent circle, and then it's sub-circles, so to speak, that there would be at least one, ideally 2 people overlap so that they can really carry information from one to the other. So there's overlap, yeah, but it's about 190 people or something like that. That's a lot of people, and as John said, it's all international, so there's all the, time zones, languages, all of that.
So getting everybody involved, so everybody has a say, they know they have a say, they know they're heard, not just feeling heard, but they know they're heard, and creating the circles or the teams and how information flows from one team to the next, whether it's up and down or sideways to sideways, however this organization is. Is that summation?
Yeah, and information is so key to everything, For example, circles also make their budget decisions, right? But they need to understand the wider context of the budget, like where does money even come from? Where does it go? What are other people spending? Or, for example, we have a policy that each circle can set the pay rate for if somebody's paid in the circle, right? Not everybody is. It's largely people are volunteers, but there are people in paid positions. So now, what's their pay rate? Based on what? And that is a decision that the circle can make. Which, by the way, it's also one of the pay, and Sociocracy is actually one of the topics in the conference too. And it's one of those things where it's great to have a say, and sometimes also a little bit of I don't want to call it a burden, but it's a little scary, it's intimidating, it's daunting for groups to have to make these decisions. So that empowerment also comes with so much responsibility that sometimes people are not throwing their hands up in the air to take it, right? But that, to me, is part of what we all need to learn, right? And that people in co-ops need to learn, people in sociocratic organizations in general need to learn to have these conversations and really make those decisions intentionally and together.
Okay, John and I are in a circle, and we're in the marketing circle. I taught marketing, John, so we can talk. Okay. And we decide that I'm going to be volunteer and John's going to get paid. And so we decide John should get paid $75 an hour. Now, Ted, you and I are in a circle, and we're in the, what circle we're in, Ted? What's the circle you in?
How about we do something like training? Let's do training.
Okay. Now, John and I decided he's going to get $75 an hour, and you're going to be doing the training. So let's say we decide you're going to get $30 an hour because trainers don't need as much money, or they don't make as much money as marketing people are. Doesn't that cause some conflict now if if you find out that John is making 75 and you're only making 30?
Yeah, and we do have differences. By the way, overall in sociocratic organizations, the difference between the lowest and the highest paid person tends to be not as big, as you would have. Well, I'm not sure whether I would say that it necessarily creates conflict. It surely creates tension, yes, but not tension as in conflict, but more in like, whoa, okay, what do we do with that?
Okay.
How do we hold that? And for example, the difference for accommodating for different areas in the world, right? Like, what does somebody get paid in Mexico versus in New York City? That's really has to do some breathing of like, okay, that's now happening. We need to talk about this. How can we hold this well? So that is a big topic.
So what I like that you said is there's tension from a standpoint of let's have a conversation and let's figure this out. What are all of the variables that goes into John $75 an hour and you're $30 an hour? Or if John lives in San Francisco as opposed to southern Seattle or wherever, the price of living is much higher. And you say Mexico City, but it could be anywhere where it's lower. How do you work all of that? And I guess it's just through conversation. Jax, getting the fifth principle of information training, getting the data and then sorting it through and then coming up with something and having the say of what you come up with. John, you were going to really say something?
Nothing is permanent in sociocracy. We have the mantra of good enough for now, safe enough to try. So people consent, right, to what they're getting paid, and they can come back and review it after a certain amount of time. And if that's not working, then they can bring the experience. It's almost like a real experiment. If you think about it, you create a hypothesis, you implement it for a time, and then you review it to see if your hypothesis was true, right? And that's how sociocracy works. It's an ongoing experiment, and so you always have the chance to revision. It's not like this is where you're stuck at for indefinite.
Good enough for now, which is getting the truth. Good enough for, and what's the second part of that?
Safe enough to try.
Safe enough to try. Got it. I love it. Good enough for now, safe enough to try. Okay, so we're going to go back to the conference. And in the conference, there's Sociocracy as a guide to our pay process in a worker co-op.
That's the one I was referring to, right?
That's what we're just talking about, too, huh?
Right. Exactly.
And then in particular, one thing that we've been asked to point out as the session on diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice that John, I think, already mentioned, but just pointing that out, everybody is very excited to have Jessica Gordon-Nemhard there to talk about that, because that's also, of course, one of the central issues when we talk about power and distribution of power and how to make sure people are heard and have a say. That's, of course, a huge topic that is really central.
So we're going to take our break, and I'm going to come back and talk about the circular cooperative model in Turkey, co-creating a community of practice, but these different segments. And I want to spend a little bit more time talking about Jessica Gordon-Nemhard and her DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the talk that she's going to be talking about, because she's been on the show 4 or 5 times in these 8.5 years, and she's one of my heroines. She's awesome. Tremendous amount of knowledge the lady has. We are going to our third and final break. Gentlemen, I knew this was going to go quick with all that we could talk about, but we're going to take a break and we're going to come back, and I want to encourage everybody to go to www.sociocracy4all, hit content to understand what this organization is about, and if you hit training and events, you can come down to get information about the conference. We'll be right back. Please do not touch that dial.
Your news talk station. Welcome
back, everybody. Information is power, and that's the reason WOL is a great partner for these last almost 9 years. But it's not information that gives you the power. You only get the power when you get into action, when you use the information. That's where the power comes, and you can get a lot of power, a lot of information by coming to this conference on Sociocracy and co-ops. That's going to be next Thursday from 11 a.m. Eastern Time to 6. You can go to Sociocracy for All webpage, sociocracyforall.org, and get information about it. Ted, we haven't talked. How much does this cost?
You are catching me completely drawing a blank on this one, because that is another one, an interesting one. There I'm, executive director of this organization, and the price for this conference was set by the circle. So it's not I decide that. I can look it up here. It's sliding scale, $10 to $75, and suggested is $25. But I'm not a decision maker there.
I'm sorry. The circle decided that it's going to be a sliding scale from $10 to $75 with a suggestion of $25.
Yes.
That's the cost of this conference. So that first seems low. And secondly, why a sliding scale? I know you didn't do it as executive director. I got that. But why a sliding scale from $10 to $75?
Well, do you want to speak to that, John, since you're in the circle?
I think it was actually the conference circle that set the actual price. And so the conference circle helps do the actual production of the conference, and the co-op circle, we decided to have a conference and we created the content, but then there's a conference circle and their job is to manage the conferences. But I think it's about understanding that there is an international basis, that for some people in some countries, $10 is a lot of money, and in some other countries, it's not as much. But also understanding that people should give people the opportunity to name their value for what they're getting. And so it's definitely, we want to be accessible to as many people as possible. And but we also definitely need to fund the organization as well. And so giving people the opportunity to pay it forward if they want, but also making sure that folks can also attend.
Okay, so if I wanted to go, I could pay 10 or I could pay 75.
I bet you could even pay more than 75 if you wanted to.
I have been blessed enough, John, that you're absolutely right. If I wanted to pay more, and I believe in a God, so God has blessed me that I could pay more. Now, if I were somebody, or if you knew somebody, let's say in Mexico or in Haiti or one of these countries, Bangkok, that very, very low to no income, could they come to this conference?
Yeah, because we have a general policy that affordability is something we care about, and there's even there next to the register button, there's even the reminder, like, if this is still too high, please do contact us. And I don't think we've ever turned away anybody for anything, really. So yeah, affordability really, really matters. And I think one thing that we struggle with, just kind of from the organizational perspective there, is that some people forget, what the international context means. For us, we're very much aware that people come from all over, but for sometimes in the US, they lack that comparison with, like, you realize there's also people signing up for this stuff that are from countries that wouldn't be able to afford those $10. So where do you put yourself? There's actually a feature that I really, really like on this page, on the conference page, that is where you can click, check out your questionnaire, and it walks you through a few questions to just ponder of, like, where am I in terms of finances and how does that compare? Like, to really do a little bit of a self-assessment that's honest with yourself, so that you don't just go, oh, what's the lowest I can pay kind of thing.
So where do you find that on this conference?
Go to the register, to the bottom where the registration is, and then there is a check out our questionnaire thing, and then a pop-up comes up, and you can ask. For example, it has questions here like, are you and your family homeowners or landowners, and what was your education like, and things like that. So Do you have friends that you could ask for money if you needed to, and so on? Like, what's your context? Because of course, it's so many different situations for people.
Right, there's a link to the question there, right there.
So we are committed to affordability, to talking about sociocracy for all. Given the vast inequality on our planet, affordability is something we care about. If you would like to attend our events but have a hard time affording the tickets, you can contact us at events@sociocracyforall.org to get a discount. Okay, and there's unsure how much to contribute. Check out our questionnaire. Phenomenal. So you're living your mission. Okay.
Trying to, yes. It's always, and of course, I guess one thing I want to say about that is there's always balance, right? It's always about balance. Because, I mean, in the extreme case, which is not going to happen anytime soon, but in the extreme case, if we went bankrupt, nobody would be able to afford there would be nothing to buy, There would be no offerings, there would be no articles, there would be no website, and so on. So we're constantly trying to manage that polarity between, okay, how can we make it accessible to everybody, because that's what we're about, while still making sure there are offerings and we can, for example, pay our own people an actually living wage. That is something we're struggling with from time to time.
So I would like to ask you about the circular cooperation model in Turkey. What is that segment about?
Well, we had a member from Turkey join our circle, and that person is a co-op developer in the country, and it's a burgeoning cooperative movement in Turkey, and so this is an effort to have a session for people in that country to be able to speak in their own language and talk to each other and sort of develop a community of practice, if you will, and start peer exchange and help build both the cooperative movement but also the sociocratic world within the country. And it's really exciting. I think I'm someone that really tries to learn as much as I can about how co-ops are acting in countries outside of the U.S. because there's an incredibly vibrant international movement, and we have a lot to learn from other countries and how to cooperate for us in the U.S. And so this is an opportunity to look into that window and learn about how other people do it.
So, John, when you were on the show before, what we talked about was your index, your evaluation tool, where you looked at a co-op to see how well is a co-op doing compared to its mission and the co-op values and principles. Are you using that at all when you're talking about the sociocracy and cooperation?
We do use it. We definitely, with co-ops that have the time and space to be able to use it for their strategic planning or other internal analysis, we certainly put it forward. In my dissertation, that's how I compared different types of co-op management, including one that was using Sociocracy and how they scored with the co-op index. And so the sociocratic co-op scored quite high compared to the other models that were in play. So it's definitely has some basis to it. I'd love to do more. We're still trying to get it to become an online tool for people to be able to use and be able to build that data.
So, John, when you go in to develop a co-op, is there any sort of here are 4 things that they must do and 2 things that would be hurtful or harmful? Do you have any rules like that?
Well, I was told by one client after listening to me for a while, she said to me, so if I'm hearing you right, you're saying there's no one right way to do a co-op, but there are plenty of wrong ways to do a co-op. I really believe in self-determination, and people should be able to try to help people do what they want to do, find out what they want to do, and then try to find how to do that within the cooperative world. And if it's not something that is really going to be fit within the cooperative world, I tell them that.
Okay.
So, that is their choice.
So just a minute or 2 left. Ted, you had mentioned Jessica Gordon-Nimhard, so I'd like to leave out with that, and if you would tell people one more time how they can find out about this conference.
Sure. So you go to the sociocracyforall.org website and go to the tab on the top that says training and events, and then events and workshops. And then it's listed there. It should be easy to find. And yes, that session that Jessica is doing, diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice, is going to walk people through that context of shared power and diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice in the co-op movement. So that's, as I said, one of the things that we're really paying attention to because it is so core and center when we talk about power. So excited about that.
And I would like to just also point out, Sociocracy for All has an incredible social justice statement on its website, and that was crafted using Sociocracy. It started out of the co-op circle, and it ended up going to the mission circle, and then the entire membership, and there's a helping circle to craft it, and it's an incredibly elegant statement that came out of the response to the murder of George Floyd a couple of years ago, and I'm really proud of not only of the statement, but the process in creating it, because it really is, and that's part of why we also really wanted to make sure that
Gotta go, brother. I'm sorry. I like it. I like what you're saying. Everybody, please check with us next Thursday.
Your news talk station.